Level 1. You never plan on becoming a criminal. Nobody does. It starts with something small, something that barely feels illegal at all. But the black market has a way of pulling you in, one level at a time. And by the time you notice how far you've gone, there's no clean way back out. Every level up, the money gets bigger. The people around you get more dangerous, and the exit gets harder to find. This is your life, ranked through every level of being a black market dealer. From the kid flipping knockoff sneakers at a flea market, all the way to the kind of operation that ends up in federal court documents. Let's start at the bottom. You're 16 years old, and you've just figured out you can buy a box of knockoff watches, phone cases, and bootleg DVDs online for almost nothing, and flip them for real money at the local flea market on Saturdays. It doesn't feel like crime. It feels like hustle. Your friends are bagging groceries for minimum wage, and you're walking away from a single weekend with more cash than they make in 2 weeks. Nobody's watching you. There's no federal agent tracking a box of fake sunglasses coming in from overseas. Your parents think you're just good with money. Your teachers think you're entrepreneurial, and honestly, at this level, you kind of are. You're just also breaking trademark and import law without realizing, or without caring, because the risk feels like zero. This is where almost every person on this entire ladder started. Not with a master plan, not with some criminal mastermind moment, just a small, easy yes to a slightly gray opportunity that nobody stopped them from taking. And that's the first lesson the black market teaches you, quietly, before you even realize you're being taught anything. Nobody stopped you the first time, so some part of your brain starts to believe nobody ever will. Level 2. You start looking for the next thing to sell, something a little rarer, something a little more valuable, something people want badly enough that they'll pay well above retail and never ask where it came from. Word travels fast when you're the person who can get things other people can't. Now, it's not just knockoff merchandise. People are coming to you for imported electronics without the import tax stapled on, for prescription medication without the prescription, for whatever's hard to get through normal channels in your city. You're not making anything. You're not even really selling anything, not directly. You're the connection, the person who knows the person who has it. This is the level where you learn what the black market actually runs on, and it's not the product, it's trust. A buyer has to believe you'll actually deliver what you promised, on time, without ripping them off. A supplier has to believe you won't talk if something goes wrong. Every deal you close cleanly adds to a reputation that's worth more to you now than the profit from any single sale. Because reputation is what gets you access to the next level up. And access is the only real currency in this world. Level 3. You start meeting people you wouldn't have met a year ago. Some of them are just other hustlers like you. A few of them are connected to something bigger. And one day, one of them offers you a chance to stop being the middleman for small stuff and start being the guy who actually controls a whole category of product in your city. Generalists get caught. Specialists get rich. That's the unwritten rule at this level, and you learn it fast. So, you pick a lane and you go deep. Maybe it's counterfeit designer goods moving through a network of resellers. Maybe it's rare and protected wildlife products smuggled in through side channels. Maybe it's stolen antiquities quietly moving out of conflict zones through art dealers who ask no questions. Whatever it is, you become the name. Not a name, the name for that specific product in your entire city. This is the level where the money stops feeling like side income and starts feeling like your actual life. You're clearing more in a single month than most people you grew up with make in a year. But you don't buy a new car. You don't post about it. You upgrade quietly. Better apartment under someone else's name. Nicer clothes that don't scream new money. A life that looks comfortable but not suspicious. You've learned lesson 2 of this world. It rewards people who look boring on the outside, while everything underneath is anything but. Level 4. For context on how big this world actually is, the global illegal wildlife trade alone is estimated in the billions of dollars every single year, making it one of the largest black markets on the planet, right up there with counterfeit goods and narcotics. You are, whether you think about it this way or not, now a small piece of a global economy that operates entirely in the dark. And like any growing business, eventually local supply isn't enough anymore. You've outgrown what your city alone can supply, so now you're bringing product across borders. Shell shipments labeled as something else entirely. Paperwork that's technically false, but looks technically fine. Routes chosen specifically because they're the least inspected, not because they're the fastest. You haven't personally touched a single item in years. You're a name on an encrypted chat thread, a wire transfer from an account that isn't in your real name, a signature that doesn't trace back to you, no matter how hard someone looks. This is the level where you stop being a small operator and start being an actual supply chain. Multiple links, multiple countries sometimes, multiple people who each only know their one small piece of the operation. It's smart because it's protective. Nobody below you can give up someone they've never actually met. Level 5. But it's also the level where you first start showing up somewhere you can't see. Not as a name yet, as a pattern. A shipment that gets flagged for a random inspection more often than statistically makes sense. A customs analyst somewhere on a random Tuesday noticing that a certain route keeps producing certain kinds of anomalies. You don't know any of that is happening. You just know business is good, and it's about to get a lot bigger, because you've just discovered the internet can do for your business what borders never could. You move part of the operation online, and it changes everything about the scale you're operating at. Encrypted marketplaces, cryptocurrency payments that don't run through any bank you'd recognize, buyers and sellers who never see each other's faces, communicating only through usernames and encrypted messages. It's the biggest jump in volume you've ever had. Suddenly, you're doing more transactions in a week than you used to do in 6 months, complete with a 5-star rating system, just like any other online store, except every single listing is illegal. Here's the thing almost nobody moving into this level thinks about until it's too late. Going digital doesn't make you invisible, it makes you permanent. Every transaction gets logged somewhere, even on networks built specifically to obscure that. Every server has to exist physically, somewhere, run by someone. Every username, no matter how careful you are, eventually gets reused just one time too many. On one platform too many. And that's the thread that unravels everything. Level 6. The most famous case study in exactly this mistake is the Silk Road Marketplace, run by a man named Ross Ulbricht, which did over $1 billion in transactions before federal investigators finally traced the operation back to him, not through some flashy sting, but through patient, unglamorous digital forensics that took years to build. It's one of the most studied cases in how digital black markets actually get caught, and it's a preview of exactly the kind of trail you're now leaving behind you, level after level, transaction after transaction. But right now, at this level, all you see is the money. And the money means you have a new problem, one a lot more boring than smuggling, and a lot more dangerous. What do you actually do with all of it? Cash from illegal goods is functionally useless to you if you can't spend it without triggering questions. So now you're running it through legitimate-looking businesses, a car wash, a nail salon, a small import company, anything with enough natural cash flow that a little extra doesn't stand out. You learn to think less like a dealer and more like an accountant. Depreciation schedules, reasonable-looking revenue numbers, employees who genuinely believe they work at a normal small business, because on the surface, they do. Level 7. Here's the historical pattern that should worry you if you knew about it. Most black market operations that eventually collapse don't collapse because of the goods. They collapse because of the money trail those goods left behind. Financial crimes units, more often than drug units or customs units, are the ones who actually take down the biggest operations, because a product can disappear, but a deposit, a wire transfer, a pattern of unexplained wealth leaves a permanent paper trail that's almost impossible to fully erase. You don't know that yet. All you know is that for the first time, you have actual, spendable wealth, the kind that could last generations if it's handled right, which means, for the first time, you're not just protecting a business anymore, you're protecting a legacy. You've built real distance between yourself and everything illegal now. Runners who move product, resellers who handle customers, importers who handle the borders, financiers who handle the money. None of them have ever met you in person. If any single link in that chain gets caught, they genuinely cannot give up someone they've never seen and don't know how to find. Level 8. You are, by any normal measure, rich. Genuinely, generationally rich. The kind of money that changes what your grandchildren's lives will look like. But you've also built something that can't just be quietly shut down anymore. An operation this size has payroll, essentially. Dozens of people depending on a steady flow of income to stay loyal and stay quiet. Which means you can't actually stop, even if some part of you wants to, because the moment the money stops flowing, the loyalty stops with it. The empire that made you free is the same empire that now keeps you exactly where you are. Level 9. And empires this size don't stay invisible forever. At this level, some of the biggest black market operations in history stopped buying silence and started buying protection outright. A bribed inspector here, a compromised official there. Enough money quietly moving to the right people that investigations mysteriously stall, evidence goes missing, or cases simply never get filed in the first place. History's largest black market figures didn't get to this size by hiding in the shadows. They got there by making themselves too expensive and too well connected to touch. But here's the part almost nobody at this level wants to admit to themselves. This is also, historically, the single most fragile level on the entire ladder. Every official you've paid off is a person who now knows exactly what you are. Every protector has a price, which quietly means every protector can eventually be outbid by a new administration, a new investigator who can't be bought, or simply a change in political winds that makes protecting you no longer worth the risk to the person doing the protecting. You've built the closest thing to untouchable that this world offers, and you're about to find out that untouchable and invisible were never actually the same thing. Level 10. By the time an operation reaches the size yours has, it's almost never a surprise raid out of nowhere. It's the end of a case that's been quietly built for years. Wiretaps that ran for months longer than you'd guess. Financial audits cross-referencing accounts you thought were clean. Undercover buyers who worked their way slowly up your chain over a very long time. And eventually, almost always, someone inside your own network, someone who's been arrested on something smaller and been offered a much lighter sentence in exchange for cooperation. You feel it before you can prove it. A supplier who suddenly goes quiet for a week with no explanation. A shipment that gets randomly inspected one too many times to actually be random. A face you swear you've seen twice too many times at the same coffee shop you always stop at. The empire that took you the better part of a decade to build can end, in the end, in a single coordinated morning. Dozens of arrests happening at once, across multiple cities, timed specifically so nobody in the network has time to warn anybody else. From here, every real story like yours ends one of exactly two ways. The first, and by far the most common, the fall. Federal charges, asset forfeiture that takes every car, every property, every account you've built, often before you're even convicted, because the law allows seizure based on suspicion of criminal proceeds. A sentence long enough that the empire you spent a decade building outlives your own freedom to ever enjoy a single dollar of it. This is how almost every real-world black market case study in history actually ends, not with a dramatic shootout, but with paperwork, a courtroom, and a very long silence afterward. The second ending is almost vanishingly rare, which is exactly why the few people who manage it become legends inside this world. The exit. Cashing everything out while the operation is still quiet, still unnoticed. Disappearing into a fully legitimate life or a new identity entirely, and never touching the trade again for the rest of your life. The real stories of people who actually pulled this off are so rare and so carefully kept quiet by the people who did it that most of what circulates about them is rumor more than fact. That rarity is exactly the point. Almost nobody manages it. That's not an accident. It's the entire design of how this world works. The black market has made people rich for as long as there's been anything valuable enough to trade illegally for it. But look at every real case study that's ever come out of this world, and the pattern repeats itself over and over. It is, more often than not, the fastest route from nothing through everything and right back to nothing again. That's every level of being a black market dealer. And now you know exactly which one you'd want to walk away from while you still can.